So this happens to me sometimes. Sometimes, let's say I would have a family member talk to me and I'm thinking about something else, but I'm listening to them, but I'm not really listening to them. I'm just more thinking about what I gotta do or like whatever I'm thinking about, right? So that gaze in my eyes always gives me away, and they know when I'm not listening. 100%, even if it's like a split moment that I'm not listening. Certain family members just know as soon as I disconnect, they know I'm thinking about something else. So the eyes give it away. They always say, you see people's souls through their eyes. So the eyes gives a lot of things away. If someone can't speak to you looking at you straight in the eyes, right there, that's your cue that something's off. So if their eyes are distant, know that they're not there. They've disconnected. Hello, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Sarah, and I'm going over The Gene Keys, a book written by Richard Rudd, which explains your DNA and goes through all 64 states of consciousness. So before we start today's video, I wanted to wish all the Persians out there, the Iranians out there, a wonderful new year. Spring equinox is our New Year's. So it's not necessarily a Muslim thing. However, Nowruz is also known as the Persian New Year, which means new day. So Nowruz, new day. And it's celebrated across ethnic groups with a common Silk Road heritage. This is why it's not all, the Muslim people, not all the Middle East that celebrates this. It's mainly celebrated by the ethnic groups that have the common Silk Road heritage. So that includes Afghanistan, India, Iran, Iraq, Kazakhstan, Pakistan, Tajikistan, Turkey, Kurdistan, but Kurdistan doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately. So to my Kurdish people, and as well as their diaspora in other countries. So again, Happy New Year's and happy spring equinox to whoever that celebrates the solstices, the spring equinox. All right, so it's kind of hectic in my house, as you can see, but I'm dressed for the occasion. So a little recap on our last show. During our last show, we went over gene key number 19. So the wonderful shadow of codependence. So you're codependent in your relationship. The husband goes to work, the wife stays at home. You're codependent with your food. You're codependent with society. You're codependent with literally practically everything that you're involved in because we live in a codependent society. Then you hit the gift of sensitivity. So the 19th gift is sensitivity. You become more sensitive, which means you're more tuned in with the animal world. You're more tuned in with the world of nature. You start seeing other realms. You become psychic in the eyes of other people. You can hear voices and hear angels. You can see spirits. So you're pretty much like a shaman. You're back to being in tune with nature, and therefore you're no longer codependent. So once you're more independent and you're more sensitive, you do a quantum leap, because the CD is a quantum leap from the shadow and the gift. It's not like it's gradual like it isn't with the shadow and with the gift. Once you hit the CD, it becomes a quantum leap because everything you've worked for so far, which is your individual self, you sacrifice. And that's why the 19th city is called the city of sacrifice. You sacrifice what you've worked for up to now, which is your individual self, your independence, and you sacrifice it to the whole because you want to go back to being connected to everybody else, which is called interdependent. So you go from codependent to independent to interdependent. And then once you hit interdependence, you're back to being with everybody else. And in order to hit your higher self, you have to sacrifice your lower self. And this is why they're giving examples like Jesus Christ or the Norse Odin, which speak of individual sacrifices on behalf of the whole. So they say that the 19th city is the first city that's going to hit collectively at the same time for everybody. And the 19th shadow of codependence is disappearing from this earth, which means that shadow in the not too distant future will no longer exist, and we will have ascended into the gift of sensitivity and into the city of sacrifice. So in today's show, we're going to go over gene key number 20. So gene key number 20, the sacred Om, the programming partner, 34th gene key. The codon ring, it's part of the ring of life and death, which consists of gene key number 3, 20, 23, 24, 27, and 42. Physiology, brainstem, also called medulla, and not Medusa, but medulla. Amino acid, leucine. So gene key number 20, shadow number 20 is called superficiality. Superficiality. So let's start. The insect revolution. The language of the 20th gene key and its various frequencies is a purely existential language. It doesn't really involve thought or thinking in any way at all, and as such, it is quite challenging to grasp at an intellectual level. The 20th shadow in particular concerns how deeply consciousness is able to incarnate into human form. The more embedded consciousness is within the form, the less pure its expression will be. This gene key is about the quantity of consciousness that can express itself through a human being, and in the sense, it is one of the most mystical of all the 64 gene keys. In the case of the 20th shadow, very little consciousness can express itself at all, so that we can see a very watered down reflection of life's real potential coming through human beings operating at this frequency. The role of this shadow is to keep human beings just on the fringe of life without really plunging in. It is the shadow of superficiality. It may sound as though the 20th shadow is somehow the fault of human beings and that perhaps if we were to do things differently or better, we might escape this plight. However, as we shall see, this aspect of our DNA is very ancient. In fact, it has led us to our current state of evolution. The 20th gene key and its shadow represents a part of the human genome that developed through species that preceded human beings. Most notably, this gene key is the main aspect that humans share with the world of insects and opens up some striking parallels between these two worlds. When we observe insects, one of the things that we can see is how incredibly busy they always seem to be. Most insects only live for a very brief period of time during the summer months, and during those days, weeks, or months, they live pure existential lives whose only focus is to stay alive and reproduce. Early hominids lived in a similar existential reality during a time when genetic programming was mostly expressed through the physical body, through breathing, eating, killing, and having sex. The further we go back in our evolution, the more existential our lives appear to have been. All of this changed with the development of the human neocortex, since this precipitated a shift in the geography of our awareness from our physical instincts to the rapidly burgeoning cognitive abilities in the brain. A strange thing happens when human beings begin to think. It appears that we leave the present moment. This illusion occurs because the mind can only think in a linear fashion, placing every object of thought into temporal framework. This is the trade-off of the incredible abilities of the mind. For all its genius, it is limited to thinking within the domains of a false reality called time. To the extent that you are dominated by your thinking, consciousness is impeded from functioning fully. This is what we refer to in this gene key as superficiality. To live superficially means to live within the false illusions fabricated by the mind. Many of us yearn for the so-called old days, when the human mind did not have such a grip on our reality, and we lived a more primitive, simpler, and somehow pure existence. The fact is that it wasn't pure in any way at all, and evolution cannot travel backwards. When we, like animals, functioned entirely from our instincts, we had very little sense of morality or conscience. If we were instantly projected there now, the good old days would probably seem both horrific and barbaric to us. The evolution of the human brain has changed the face of our planet, particularly over the past 100 years. And though we sometimes like to complain about the state of the world, this transformation has for the most part been hugely beneficial. The interesting thing about human beings is that we are a mixture of ancient instinctive animal awareness, our current rational mental awareness, and a future holistic spiritual awareness that is about to come fully online. Our nostalgia about the old ways actually stems from a genetic memory inside us of a very early epoch in human evolution in which our spiritual awareness was fully developed. However, all evidence of this Eden period was completely obliterated by a great cataclysm which also mutated our DNA, eventually bringing about the current intellectual age. You can learn more about this from the 55th gene key. The 55th gene key is a very important gene key, and we're going to get there. I look forward to hitting that one. What appears to be superficiality is really an adjustment in the way our awareness functions. The evolutionary phase that is now coming to an end is the superficial age, when mankind appears to have moved away from nature. But this is not really the case. Despite the fact that we are now dominated by an awareness that cannot exist in the present moment, we still live in the present moment whether we like it or not. Our current mental equipment simply prevents us from feeling one with life in the way that we once did. Evolution requires us to be the superficial in order that we can complete this mental phase. However, it has led to a basic estrangement from the source of life itself, and this is reflected in our longing to return to that source. All of our scientific and religious cravings have arisen due to the inability of consciousness to move beyond the human brain. Seen in this light, one can see how all the 64 shadows have come about because of a single conundrum. The mind prevents us from feeling one with life. When superficiality is translated into action, it becomes blind activity just for the sake of activity. Just like ants. We're very similar to ants. So I saw this documentary, and it's crazy how the ants, not only they have their community, not only they work in group, but they have like a pharmacy underground. Like they'll go and get these plants that have these antibiotic things in them and would go and store them in their pharmaceutical section, in their like pharmacy. And whenever an ant's not feeling good, it actually goes into the pharmacy and cures itself with these plants. It's pretty crazy. They also have pets. So they have like these other small insects that they carry with them. So it's very similar if you think about it. They have pets, they have pharmacy, they know how to heal, they work in group, they work nonstop, like we do the rat race. It's pretty crazy if you think about it, the similarities. The wonderful world of ants. The only time you are really one with life at the shadow frequency is when you are busy, even though, by its very nature, this busyness lacks real presence. Rather, it is an absence of awareness. This makes human beings seem similar to insects. We are programmed to be incredibly busy on an individual level. However, unlike certain insect societies, we do not yet operate as a collective. We gotta learn that from the ants. The programming partner of the 20th shadow is the 34th shadow of force, which is about self-absorption. When your activity lacks awareness, it becomes a destructive force that plays havoc with your environment. These two shadows manifest activity or lack of activity in response to the situations created in your mind. Only when the mind has been overridden by our future awareness rooted in the solar plexus can consciousness begin to manifest activity that no longer meets resistance. This is what the Buddha referred to as right action. Right action occurs when the frequency of your DNA lifts you out of the shadow states, at which point all your activity emerges naturally and harmoniously. Only in this final phase of our evolution will mankind begin to imitate the more complex insect societies such as ants or bees. As consciousness begins to breathe through every single individual, thus melding the collective into one. So what happens if you manifest this shadow internally? So the shadow of superficiality, and you're an introvert. So you're in the 20th shadow. You are acting superficial. You're in the shadow of superficiality because your actions are all towards being 100% productive. You don't even know, let's say, why you're busy. You're just busy for the sake of being busy. You don't live in the present moment. And therefore, by always running away from the present moment, you don't have the focus that you want to have. You have your focus all over the place. And therefore, you live a more superficial life. So, through this superficiality, if you're an introvert and you're in the shadow, how would you manifest this? What would be the repressive nature of the shadow of superficiality? So, the repressive nature is absent. You're pretty much absent. You're there physically, but you're absent. The introverted nature of the 20th shadow gives the impression of being totally absent. This is primarily reflected in a person's eyes, which can appear staring or distant. So this happens to me sometimes. Sometimes, let's say I would have a family member talk to me and I'm thinking about something else, but I'm listening to them, but I'm not really listening to them. I'm just more thinking about what I gotta do or like whatever I'm thinking about, right? So that gaze in my eyes always gives me away. And they know when I'm not listening. 100%, even for if it's like a split moment that I'm not listening. Certain family members just know. As soon as I disconnect, they know I'm thinking about something else. So the eyes give it away. They always say, you see people's souls through their eyes. So the eyes gives a lot of things away. If someone can't speak to you, looking at you straight in the eyes, right there, that's your cue that something's off. So if their eyes are distant, know that they're not there. They've disconnected. This expression of the 20th shadow can also be an intermittent theme rather than being permanent. The consciousness in such people is often frozen by an intense unconscious fear that temporarily displaces them. This withdrawing of consciousness from the body is actually a kind of mini-death. It can also be brought about through an intense shock. There are people in whom life sporadically switches on and off according to the activity or inactivity in their minds. So, what if you're an extrovert? How would you manifest this shadow of superficiality? So, if you're an extrovert, the way you would react to this would be the reactive nature of hectic. You live very hectically. So, the opposite of absent is hectic in this case. In the reactive nature, the mind will do the opposite to the repressed nature. Instead of numbing the fear, this kind of nature will immediately translate it into activity. These people are ceaselessly on the move, unable to stop in their hectic self-absorption. Again, this is a state that is extremely widespread among human populations due to the deep connection between the shadow and the way in which our mind translates it into activity. The world in which we live is increasingly hectic because our human programming makes it so. As new awareness begins to dawn in human beings, an enormous amount of human activity will simply cease, since it emerges as a byproduct of the mind's restlessness. So I actually experience both of these. If I have too much going on, I'll just go absent because I'll just be in my head the whole time. Or if I just want to divert, I make sure I remain busy. So when I was young, that was definitely, I was a reactive side of this. And again, I don't have this in my golden path. It's not part of my hologenetic profile. But like I said, we hit all 64 gene keys regardless. They're all our shadows that we, one day or the other, will encounter. So again, it's temporary. It comes and goes. But it has happened in my life where a lot of things were going wrong and I just kept myself busy with work. And when you keep yourself busy with work, it's a wonderful distraction. Whatever, you overwork yourself in doing so will distract you from, like, let's say, your personal problems that you got to deal with. So it's a wonderful way of not living in the present moment. Either you numb yourself and you become distant, or you make sure that you're super busy, that you don't have time to think about the present moment. So once you're in the shadow of superficiality, how do you get out of it? What's the 20th gift? So the 20th gift is self-assurance. You become self-assured. And that's how you get out of the shadow of superficiality. So the 20th gift, self-assurance, divine relaxation. The gift of self-assurance comes into being when a human being first learns to let go of their thinking as the authority in making decisions. With self-assurance must come a profound surrender to life in every moment. As you begin to accept that life has its own plans and flow, you also begin to stop interfering with the process at a mental level. No technique can lead to this gift. Only life itself can show you how to let go. This gift is, in fact, the precursor to a higher state of spiritual awareness. You begin to discover that decisions in life simply get made, so there is really no point in agonizing over them. Decisions at a higher level of frequency are made in the moment, rather than being premeditated. Your mind may decide on a certain course of action, but when the decision is actually made at the gift frequency, it emerges instantly and clearly through the entirety of your being. The 20th gift is the foundation of a happy life and is part of the genetic family known as the ring of life and death. The ring of life and death can actually teach us how to create the perfect environment for children to grow into happy, healthy, and enlightened adults. For a child to grow up truly self-assured, you need to model altruism, Gene Key 27, while remaining detached, 42, and encourage invention, 24, innovation, 3, and above all, simplicity, 23. These 5 keys can become the foundation of a complete life system for parents, and contemplation on them can lead to a profound sense of freedom for both children and parents. Self-assurance is directly analogous to individual strength through its programming partner, the 34th gift. Every child has their own natural strength that emerges organically as they develop, as long as they are given the right loving environment through their parents and peers. The ultimate loving environment for a child is to be surrounded by self-assured adults. The field of openness, integrity, and relaxation created by a large family or community of adults manifesting right action is the perfect natural educational base for children. Self-assurance marks the end of human tendency to worry about life. It also carries a certain sense of humor within it, although this is really an inner sense of humor or a sense of lightness about life. At this level of frequency, you begin to have the faintest inkling that you may exist at a higher level than you know. You also begin to have the feeling that some higher presence is actually looking after you. Human beings like to anthropomorphize this feeling in a whole host of ways, through spirit guides and angels, through contact with the souls of the departed, or as the Godhead itself watching over us. In its purest sense, the state of self-assurance is actually your own greater nature emerging. It is a sign that more consciousness is being allowed to incarnate into the physical vehicle. Ironically, the more you anthropomorphize this feeling, the less it grows, because that is taking it back into the realm of the mind where it truly doesn't belong. What is occurring at this gift level is that you are beginning to experiment with humanity's future instruments of awareness, the solar plexus system. Within the human body are contained the genetic instructions for a higher mutation in the functioning of our solar plex system. Once an individual mutation of this kind has been triggered, it is triggered by the 55th gene key, a whole new level of awareness functioning becomes available to you. The 20th gift prepares the ground for this higher mutation, and we will see its full manifestation in the 20th city. Your self-assurance is directly equivalent to your ability to escape being a victim of your mind. As you begin to learn this knack, you experience the subtle expansion of a meditative awareness and ability to witness your mind without being caught up in it. This sense of spaciousness continues to grow within, and as you let go more deeply into it, it seems as though you are in the grip of another force outside yourself. The byproduct of this expansion is the quality of self-assurance, the continual feeling that everything is going to be all right. At this stage, a kind of relief dawns. You no longer have to try and control life. On the contrary, you now allow life to move you. What actually occurs with this gift is that the awareness within your solar plexus begins to take over from your mind. In China and Japan, there has always been a profound understanding based upon the solar plexus center, which is known in the Orient as the Hara or Dantian. The practitioners of the ancient yogic systems discovered this latent awareness within the Hara and based their entire philosophy around it, from medicine to martial arts. The awareness that it emanates from the solar plexus center is based upon surrender. In this sense, it is about tapping a very powerful universal feminine power. It may come as a shock to some that the power of self assurance is based upon surrendering rather than assertion. Self assurance is far more than simple confidence, which can be built up through assertion or technique. The 20th gift can only be cultivated through trust, patience, and surrender, none of which are techniques. As such, self assurance is based upon a philosophy of allowing everything to come to you rather than going out and chasing life down. It is because of this divine laziness that the 20th gift is the real foundation for inner relaxedness. So, once you're in the gift level for a while, once you're self assured for a while, you know that you can count on your gut instinct. You know that everything's going to be okay. You get out of your mind because your mind loves to worry. But your mind doesn't understand the metaphysical. The mind doesn't understand that there's a greater self helping you. And this only comes with experience. Because as long as you're in the survival mode, victim mindset, you're not going to be able to be self assured. And it's beyond confidence. Because you can work on confidence. Like I've always been extremely confident. I always told myself if they can do it, I can do it, or maybe I can do it even better. But at the least, I can do it as much as they can. So because of that, I never was left behind. However, self-assurance is different. Self-assurance is that, because confidence, you have your youth and you have your look and you have your diplomas, you have techniques to become confident. You can change your environment and then you become confident, right? So this self-assurance, I'm telling you, it only comes with experience. You might, feel this at a young age. Absolutely. But from what I've experienced is that the younger people are more concerned about what's going to happen. They're more concerned, they're more worried, they plan more versus when you've, let's say, planned for 40 years and you see that like most of the things that you've planned didn't even, occur. You can see there's a higher intelligence. There's a higher intelligence that's taken over. And sometimes you just want to take a path and the door keeps shutting on you. No matter what you do, it just shuts on you. And there's nothing you can do. Or you shut it. So at that point, that road closes and you got to take another road. So it's not up to you. And again, plan, be ready, siphon your information, do your research. But you'll see that the time comes to make the decision, that's where you're going to know. It's good to be prepared. Definitely, it helps. Just like an exam, you're better off studying before. However, you're going to know the answers to all the questions. Now, I have a lot of experience with that because with my line of work, I had obstacles thrown at you. So when, let's say you're running a business, you can say, well, today I'm going to have this meeting. Tomorrow we're going to talk about accounting. The day after we're going to talk about human resource and we're going to talk about marketing. You can plan it out. But you're going to see like 70% of your day as a manager, as a founder, as an owner of a company, it's obstacles thrown at you. It's suddenly there's a complaint. Suddenly somebody wants a refund and they're not happy. Suddenly there's PR that you got to take care of because something happened in public and now your name got affected. It's a million things that can happen and that's thrown at you. And I've gotten really good at that. I'm really good at being thrown obstacles and I can handle it. Versus if I, wake up in the morning and I journal, I'm like, what am I going to talk about today? It's going to be harder for me to put that down, what I'm going to talk about. I don't know. How about you throw me something and let's see how I handle it. So for me, the self-assurance, it's something I practice a long time because I've had thousands and thousands and thousands of, unexpected issues from all different industries coming my way for me to handle. So self-assurance, I can guarantee you, with time, it's even beyond confidence. You just know how to handle life. Not necessarily people, life. You're just self-assured on your life. So, shadow of superficiality. You're either absent or hectic, trying to get out of the present moment. You're constantly worried in your mind. Once you come out of superficiality through the gift of self-assurance, you become self-assured, and then you live in your more authentic self. You make decisions from your solar plexus instead of from your mind. Then once you're in that gift level for a while, you hit the 20th city. So what's the 20th city? The 20th city is called the city of presence. However, as we're going to see, it's better to call it the presence because it's not technically like your presence, it's more the presence. The feeling you get when you know God's watching. So the 20th city, the city of presence, the sacred octave. The 20th city is so unique that there is very little that can be said about it. Mythically, it is represented by the notion of the breath of God or the word of God. Presence is the underlying nature of being. In fact, the word presence does not do this city justice. It would actually be truer to name the city the presence, since the use of the definite article gives us the distinct impression that this is a state of consciousness that has nothing to do with an individual. It is the manifestation of the presence of the divine through a human instrument. Whenever a human being attains the citic state, he or she is suffused with the presence. Pure consciousness floods their being, silencing the mental activity and drawing the person into eternal present moment. When this occurs, the whole world created by the human mind is suddenly seen as utterly superficial. The smallest thing, such as a leaf or stone, is understood to have more life within it than all the greatest ideas of men. The presence is experienced as everywhere and inherent in everything, and is where we get the term omnipresence. In the state of presence, the individual is no more. You may find yourself sitting in the same spot for 3 days, and it seems as though not a single second has passed. Time dissolves into the background consciousness of all beings. When you experience a brief moment of déjà vu, you are tasting the purity of a moment of true presence, in which the present moment becomes a funnel for both the past and the future, momentarily intensifying and transcending them. The presence is also extraordinary in that it can be felt by anyone. When this city has flowered in a person, it actually creates a subtle atmosphere around itself, a kind of silent ease that pervades the aura of the person and radiates out to all creation. One of the great effects of being in the presence is the deepening of your breath. The presence links all human beings as one through the breath. Therefore, people immersed in the atmosphere of presence begin to breathe as one entity. The true citic state is one of complete relaxation. As you release deeper and deeper levels of tension, the higher frequencies of the presence force you to sight until your physical body comes into a state of great ease. The presence can also be seen as an intense softness in a person's gaze. To a person immersed in the presence, absolutely nothing matters. Thoughts are irrelevant, and suffering no longer exists because the mind has been cut at the root. There is nothing to say that is not superficial. Only silence can approach the truth. We can see through the ring of life and death, the codon ring associated with this gene key, that the presence is also the same quintessence sought by generations of seekers over millennia, the 23rd gene key. It also has a direct relationship to the experience of silence. Number 24, selflessness. 27, innocence. 3, and celebration. 42. The 20th city relates to the mystical nature of the octave, the transcendent note that begins, ends, and links together all vibrations throughout the universe in which we live. It is also the 8th color, the purer white containing the other 7 colors, and that which also brings us back to the number 0, the blackness out of which all form arises. Above all, it is the sacred breath that unites the realms of both light and sound, allowing us to enter completely into consciousness as pure existence. The 20th city also relates to the 8th plane of reality, the true ground of our divinity known as the logoic plane. As consciousness expands through each of the 7 layers or sheaths that surround the human being, see the 22nd gene key for a full description of each, the eternal cosmic ocean of consciousness in which we swim, the body of the Logos or divine word, is finally revealed in all its glory. This logoic sphere, the 8th transcendent plane, is beyond humanity, beyond words, and beyond forms. The 7 sacred bodies of humanity are: number 1, physical. The second body is astral. Third body is mental. Fourth body, casual. Fifth, Buddhic. Sixth, atmic. 7, monadic. And 8th, logoic. Once the presence opens inside someone, it is difficult for them to maintain a role in the world because there is nothing of any importance to them in the world outside. Such people no longer fit into society. Neither can they explain their reality to anyone else. All they can do is go on existing, allowing life to bring them the experiences it brings, even though it is all simply uninteresting to them. The presence sweeps everything before it, ending desire, sex, thought, even feeling. These people no longer feel anything but the presence itself. Even the deepest human genetic programs, the urge to eat and survive, are swallowed up in the majesty of the presence. Some people who have entered this state actually have to be fed in order to stay alive. However, in most people, the human habits remain and continue to function, even though they are really understood as non-essential to the continuation of consciousness. In the world of the future, the 20th city will eventually absorb humanity. When it does, we will enter an eternal world, a world in which mind will no longer have any role other than to help us communicate. Through the mutation that takes place in the solar plexus, the 20th city will finally allow humanity to be at ease with our world. In Eastern cultures, the primal sound at the heart of the world is known through the symbol of the Omkar, whose sound is Om. When the 20th city dawns, this is the sound that is heard, a soundless sound connecting all life, suffusing all creation and bringing everything back into its pure essential reality. So, this is a city definitely that's out there. So whenever we do hit this city, we're no longer going to be in survival mode. We're no longer going to be using our brains so much. It's just going to be mainly for communication purposes. Our gut is going to take over. The mutation in our solar plexus system is going to direct us. Through our self-assurance, we're getting to this city. So you leave superficiality, and we're leaving that shadow, as you can see. Just by seeing what's on TV, you can already tell things are starting to be less superficial than they were, let's say, 10 years ago. So superficiality will leave. Self-assuredness will step in. And once we're self-assured for a while, the presence will take over. And that's where we're going to be no longer in the mind. And it's going to be such as the sound of Om, connecting all life back together through this presence. So a wonderful city. So thank you very much. Thank you for watching. Thanks for commenting. Thanks for liking, and thanks for supporting. Feel free to subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. So again, Happy New Year to everybody. Happy first day of spring. Happy spring solstice, equinox. This is the rebirth. Everything is going to start to bloom. Starting now. And spring means the rejuvenation of life, rejuvenation of health, the rejuvenation of abundance, the rejuvenation of prosperity, and I have nothing other than positive vibration to send out to the world. So God bless every single one of you, no matter where you are on this planet, no matter where you're from. God bless you, and Happy New Year.